We're almost done with step 5. We have finished our dots here and clipped to our dots, and then we've also finished the bottom of the facing, and we also stitched our armholes here and then trimmed this out. What we have to do now is understitch these 2 pieces. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine now and flip this out, and then I'm going to be stitching this facing to my seam here. So let's go to the sewing machine and I'll show you in better detail how we're going to do this. Alright, I'm going to apologize ahead of time for the loud corgi feet in the background. Hey Ani, can you lay down a second? No? Guess not. So now we're ready to do our understitching, and you have basically this facing, which is what you're going to be stitching on. So go ahead and flip this out so that the right sides are out. And you are going to take your seam underneath here and push it so it's flat, and push your facing on top of that, and you're going to stitch those together. Now, if you need to pin this, you can. I actually think it's harder when it's pinned, so I would recommend that you don't. And you're just going to do a stitch all the way down through that seam. So this is just a regular stitch. And I'm using a bright green thread, so hopefully you'll be able to see it. All right. And just stitch pretty close to the seam. Right along there. And be careful as you're pulling this through that you don't catch your piece underneath here. You don't want to stitch over things you're not supposed to. So just keep checking underneath to make sure. All right. Feeling underneath to make sure that you don't grab anything you're not supposed to. And keep checking underneath to make sure that that seam is pushing towards your facing. Actually, I can go ahead and push this through. And you should be able to easily understitch this entire piece. You'll find a lot of times with understitching instructions that they'll tell you to understitch as far as possible, but this is one of those pieces where you can actually understitch the entire piece. Then do a little back stitch at the end. All right. And then just take it out and check it. So here's what mine looks like on the right side. That's my facing. And like I said, I used a bright green so you can see it. And then flip it to the inside. And you'll see where it's catched just the edge, which will hold that in place. Okay? So do that same thing to the other side. I'll show you again. So here's what it looks like on the inside. So this is the wrong side of the fabric. It's all stitched, so now you need to do that exact same thing to the other side here. So do both of those and then join me again. For step 6, all you'll want to do is flip out your pieces so that you have the facing on the inside. And this is where I did my understitching. And you're just going to take that to your ironing board and gently press it so that it's as flat as possible. And make sure that these are turned out as well. So once you've pressed that, come back again. Okay, for step 7, you're going to use your piece 3. And just to quickly note, your piece 3 is going to have an attachment at the bottom. So this is the top. It's the piece 3 back AV. And then at the bottom of that, you should have taped another piece 3A to the bottom, because that gives you the full sized piece. And I've already laid out both of those piece 3s right here, both of them together, right sides together. And you're going to look for the part of the pattern that says center back. And you should be able to easily find it because it literally says center back. And you're going to pin those two sides together. So match up both your piece 3s and then pin together the section that says center back. And then we're just going to stitch a 5/8 seam all the way through that piece. So pin that and then join me and we'll sew them together. All right, now that we have those two pieces pinned together, I'm just going to do a regular 5/8 inch stitch to create the seam. Because this is a fairly large piece, you'll also want to make sure as you're stitching this that you continue to move the fabric to the back, keeping it straight, and also just making sure that it doesn't bunch in the back, because that can affect your seam. As you reach the end here, we'll stitch, do a small back stitch, and then you'll need to take this to your ironing board and press the seam open and flat. Go to the ironing board, press the seam open and flat. Moving right along here, we now have step 8, and I'm actually going to cover step 8 and step 9 together, because a lot of this will be done at the sewing machine. So these are the pieces that we just sewed together. And of course I have pressed this so that's nice and flat. And we are going to do a stay stitch right along the top here for this whole piece. And that will finish step 8. Then for step 9, you're going to take your piece 4. And if you haven't done so already, you'll want to mark the dot that's right here at the center fold and also the triangles at the top of the seam here. So I have marked both of those, and then I also took a tape measure and used my chalk to find the exact point and middle of this, just to make sure that I got exactly where I needed to be whenever I do the turn. So we're going to reinforce this and then clip to this dot, and then we're also going to finish up the bottom edge here. So I'm going to take both of these pieces to the sewing machine now and show you how to do all of that. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is the stay stitching. So here is the top, and I'm just going to start doing a permanent stitch around the top here. And I'm moving slightly inwards from 5/8. I want to do a smaller stay stitch than 5/8 so that it doesn't show. I apologize for the loud feet in the background. That is a corgi with some loud feet. And just make sure whenever you get to the middle here that your seam is pressed open and flat. And then you're going to turn once you reach that seam. All right, and that finishes the stay stitching. So you can just take that piece and set it aside. The next thing we want to do is reinforce our dot on piece 4. So my dot's right here in the center. And I'm going to do the same thing, stitching just to that point there where I made the marking, and then I'm going to do a small back stitch there because we want that part to be very strong. And then turn. Same thing, back stitch. All right, and that's pretty good. You don't need to do the entire piece. It's just to make sure that once you clip it, the fabric will be able to turn, but that it won't move around or fray on you. Then take your scissors and you're going to clip to that dot. Very close to it, but obviously not through it. All right, so it should move like this afterwards. Now I need to finish up the bottom here. I'm going to change my stitch to one of these other slightly more decorative looking ones. For me, I'm going to use number 8, which just does a simple zigzag, and I'll use that just to finish up the bottom here. All right, so just running across the bottom. Don't worry about making it perfect. It's just to hold everything together and protect it as you wear it. It also helps keep your interfacing in place. All right, so just a simple stitch like this. All right, let's move on. All right, so we are now at step 10, and this is going to be very similar to what we did before. You're just going to take your back piece here and lay it flat, and then you're going to take your piece 4, of course, right sides together, place them together, and then you're going to pin the armholes together so that you can stitch them. Now it's up to you how many pins you want to use for this. I always like to pin together at least my top, bottom, and also my notch area. You can do more or less if you choose. We'll probably use 2 more pins, and that's it. And I would recommend that you go ahead and pin both sides so that you can just stitch them all together at once. All right, now we can take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew these 2 sections together. Both of the armhole edges are pinned, and I have already finished one on the other side. This is what the armhole looks like after it's stitched. Now you're just going to stitch using a regular 5/8 inch seam. Stitch, do a little back stitch, and then just continue on until you finish the seam. stitch at the end, and you're done. Now you'll want to go to the ironing board and press these open just so you have a nice, clean, flat seam. Alright, so go do that and then join me again. Alright, so we're not quite done with step 10 yet. I pressed these open as best as I could, and then I'm going to trim out this seam. So this is the same thing that we did for the previous piece. Remember, we had the front, which also required us to sew us facing to it and then do some trimming. So we're just doing the same thing here. Just trim out this side. Be careful not to cut through your stitching. Alright, and now we need to understitch these. So back to the sewing machine. So similarly to what we did for the front piece, I'm just going to flip this out so that the right sides are out, and make sure that you are stitching on the facing. So you're going to take your seam on the inside, press it towards the facing, like so, and you're going to stitch very close to the seam. And just keep filling underneath to make sure that your seams are across the correct direction. Okay, now I'm just going to show you that one side because you'll do the exact same thing on the other side as well. So just as a reminder, this is what it looks like. That's my understitching. And then whenever you turn this in, it just makes a nice looking edge that won't turn out on you. Okay, so do that for the other side. And once you've done that for both sides, go to your ironing board and gently press both of those so that they're nice and flat, and then join me again. Once you've finished your pressing, you should have something similar to this. Now we get to move on, and we are now going to be at step 12, and we get to put our shoulders together.